Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's study session for the City of Casa Grande. The first item on our agenda is the transit governance. Dwayne, you in charge of this?
I guess so. Mayor, City Council, there's 4 of us here tonight, that's how important.
All right.
Irene Green, Executive Director of the Board of MPO, Travis Ashbaugh, Travis with CAG, Transportation Plan, and Amy Moran from Wilson and Company. Amy's going to do all the talking as usual, so when she comes. So, Amy, the rest of us are here, of course, to answer questions.
Well, thank you, Dwayne. Mayor McFarland and members of the council, thanks for having me again today. I know that I've been before you once before to talk about this study and.
Well, it's not even on.
Oh, well, I could hear myself just fine. So today we're really going to focus on just kind of a refresh on what the process was. And the study itself has wrapped up. It's been about 1.5 years in the making. And so we've got some recommendations based on the various analysis and discussion that we've had. So after we talk about the study process, we're going to talk a little bit about the different governance models that we looked at, and then eventually what the recommendations of the study were and some initial implementation steps. I do want to remind everyone that this study was really about looking at potential modern models to administer and govern transit services throughout Pinal County. It did not focus at all on actual route structuring or future route expansions. So the study process in itself essentially consisted of 6 main steps. The first one was identification of the characteristics of the existing transit service. That was really just to get an understanding of what the current population is, what potential future population is, socioeconomic characteristics, really as an indication of what potential expansion needs there could be to understand what this governing responsibility might be looking into the future. There was also a comprehensive peer review. The purpose of that was really to look at other transit agencies in the West that were communities with similar characteristics, size and population of Casa Grande, and to understand the different models that they had to govern regional transit. So we'll talk about that in just a minute here. There was also an extensive stakeholder coordination. There were several interviews, both at the elected official level and staff level, so that we could understand what people's current positions were with regard to transit in Pinal County, what the needs might be, and what they thought might be some valuable ideas and considerations moving forward when we're thinking about governing transit at the regional level. From all of that peer review and the stakeholder feedback, we identified 3 separate governance models. I'll go into those in detail in just a little bit. But really the goal was kind of to weigh what the pros and cons are and to understand what might be the best fit for Pinal County and its communities. Once we got through that process, we had 2 stakeholder workshops where we presented and provided an overview of those 3 different governance models. And we asked the folks at those workshops to kind of weigh in. What did they like about them? What did they not like about them? Where did their preferences lie? And then, of course, that led us all to documentation of the process, the findings, and what the initial recommendations were based on that entire process. We also identified some preliminary measures that should be taken to help implement the recommended strategy. And throughout it all, we had a pretty extensive technical working group that met at each of the key stages in the process to really just provide insight and guidance as we continued through the effort. So as I mentioned, essentially we identified 3 separate governance models. The first one is kind of what we might think of as status quo, and that's locally oriented transit. Essentially, the various jurisdictions continue to implement transit service for their community And if they choose to, they can cooperate and collaborate with each other. But ultimately, each of those individual jurisdictions is providing the staff and the finances to fund those transit services. The second model is sort of the other end of the spectrum. And what that is it said everybody, all the local jurisdictions are sort of going to forego their responsibility as it relates to delivering local transit service, and everybody's going to join together under an umbrella for a host agency, a consolidated agency that would have representatives from the various jurisdictions. But it would be that one main governing agency that would take the responsibility for administering all of the transit service in the county. And of course, along with that, there could be the potential for optional advisory committees, so stakeholders, citizens, folks that have interest in transit services. And then the third model was a combination, more or less, of the first two. It's a hybrid model. And in this particular model, there is a regional transit agency that is established. It will administer countywide transit service, but it's up to each of the jurisdictions to decide whether they want to opt in and participate in that regional agency, or if they choose to continue to deliver transit services on their own. And so with that, we basically took that to the stakeholders. We asked for their feedback on a variety of topics, kind of the pros and cons, what did they like. And there was general support for the consolidated model. So that's the one where everybody falls under one umbrella agency. It's the most cost effective, so as you can imagine, if you have different jurisdictions that are each hiring a transit administrator and operating those services, if you have one consolidated agency that's doing that, that person or individual will be responsible for multiple jurisdictions. There was a thought that that consolidated model would probably be most effective in improving regional transit service and then leveraging the federal funds. But in reality, the preference was for the hybrid model. Really, it's just politically more acceptable. It gives the communities more flexibility to decide at the community level what their preferences are with regard to administering transit service for the community. So with that, we said, okay, we're going to look at this hybrid model, and we're going to understand what would be potential ways to implement that. So we've got this recommendation, look at this hybrid governance model, and really there were three options that were identified through this process. The first was, well, what if the Pinal Regional Transportation Authority took over that overarching role as the governing body? That was one of the options. The second was, well, what if Central Arizona Regional Transit did it? So CART. I mean, they've been administering transit for a very long time here in Pinal County. And so obviously there's some merit to that strategy as well. And then the third option would be, well, what if we just bring in and create an entire new organization that's independent of anything that's currently happening, and have that take on that role? So we looked at kind of what the advantages and the disadvantages were of each of those. With the PRTA, obviously, they have some local responsibilities with regard to allocating funding for transit service. It would be a logical extension that they could take on that role. Of course, it now introduces a new agency into the mix. They don't currently have anybody that's administering transit programs, so they'd have to take on that responsibility and hire some individuals who would be capable of doing that. CART, again, they obviously have experience. They've been doing it for decades. That certainly could have value. Sort of the disadvantage associated with that is because CART is actually a program, if you will, that is administered by the city of Coolidge. There are some requirements to revise CART's actual governance structure in order to have them provide shared services throughout the county. Because currently, as I said, it's a program. CART is not directly receiving funds from the Federal Transit Administration. It's the city of Coolidge that is. And so there would be some modifications that would be required to their structure. And then, of course, a new agency, sort of similar to the PRTA. It doesn't exist. I mean, that's different from the PRTA, but it's an agency that doesn't exist, so you'd have to find the folks to bring on board and administer that transit. Again, it probably offers flexibility, though, that it's a standalone agency that would be solely focused on providing transit services. So while the study itself carried through all three of those as viable options, when tasked with implementation, sort of what would be the steps if we wanted to do this for Pinal County, we elected to just take the PRTA as an example of this and say, all right, let's assume that the PRTA is doing it. What would need to happen in order to have the PRTA take over these responsibilities? And so really recognizing that this is an existing body. In the past, it has had a transit subcommittee. There would be a need to reinstate that transit subcommittee so that they could focus on these topics. Similar to some of the other committees that exist with the PRTA, there would be a need to establish goals and a policy framework that would talk about how this transit authority would be governed of itself. What are their rules? What are their policies? And of course, then they'd have to hire somebody with specific expertise to administer the transit service. So assuming that we now have a new transit administrator for this countywide program, we thought of some initial steps that they would be responsible for after they came on board. The first we thought was sort of some low-hanging fruit. Let's look at implementing the regional park and ride development plan. There are monies identified. There are some sites identified in the PRTA transportation plan for that. We thought that could be a good starting point to try to locate some of those early on. There are, of course, needs to coordinate with the varied human service providers. So those are the folks that independent agencies that are providing service, for example, to the elderly or disabled, medical transport, those sort of things. So the public dial-a-ride services, and how could maybe those operate more cohesively and efficiently. And then really just focusing on supporting the development of both the local and regional transit, that sort of collaboration among the different transit providers. Because again, remember in the hybrid model, there would be this overarching governing body that could be responsible for some of the regional components of the transit service. There may be jurisdictions that would choose to continue to administer the transit on their own. And so really that effort to say, okay, if we do have local jurisdictions that are going to continue to provide their own local service, how can we sort of weave those all together in a way that makes the most sense for countywide service? And so I think that the real goal in this is recognizing that whatever method is selected to administer this hybrid model, it's all about collaboration and trying to consolidate and be efficient about the way that services are provided throughout the county. So there's going to be a need to initiate discussions among the various service providers that exist today, as well as potential new service as it comes on board in future years. And really just to understand through the varying governing bodies, what are their comprehensive goals, how do they align, and again, how can all the various services be coordinated so that there's not a high degree of overlap, so that all of these are running efficiently. Of course, just understanding what are the baseline resources for each of the agencies and how can they best be utilized, and then identifying if there's a need for formal collaborative agreements, maybe being a facilitator of establishing those agreements. So with that, I am not Bethany Whitaker, but she was the project manager with Nelson Nygaard, who is the prime on this. Wilson and Company, we're sub-consultants, but thank you for having me today, and of course I will open it up to any questions that you may have.
So did you guys then kind of come to the conclusion that the PRTA would be the best option?
The formal recommendation from the study itself is that the hybrid model is the preferred alternative for countywide governance. The 3 different options were presented. They're all viable options at this point. The PRTA seems like it could be a logical choice, but again, that's something that still needs to be determined. You know, fingers crossed, you know, a positive result from the ongoing Supreme Court case. We'll see where that takes the PRTA. But in reality, the focus is truly on the recommendations for the hybrid model. The PRTA, as I mentioned, was a viable option, and that was the one that was selected to simply demonstrate once you have this overarching governing agency, what would be the sort of those initial steps to get it going.
Okay. Lisa?
Well, thanks for being here. No, I'm happy to see the results of this study, but of course it would be nice to have even more information, you know, as far as where we are moving forward. But, you know, you talked about collaboration and consolidation. And in this study, were you able to get an idea of where some of these cities are on? I mean, it looks like the option of the hybrid option was the recommendation, but you know, if you consolidate and collaborate, and no cities are going to do it. I mean, they're just, you know, we're just saying this is a good option, but you know, is there going to be participation? Because I would imagine it would be most effective if you have a large number of cities working together and doing, you know, regional transportation, and it'll benefit all of the counties. So, so basically, my question is, did you get a feel for where municipalities are on their participation and where, you know, in moving forward in this model?
So, Mr. Mayor and members of the council, when we had those stakeholder workshops, that was truly the intent, was to try to gauge what the individual jurisdictional representatives felt about these different service models. And, you know, recognizing that there was consensus that the consolidated model made a lot of sense, but that the preference and recommendation was for the hybrid model. I would say at this point, maybe folks want to have the flexibility to sort of test the waters and see how things go. So I don't know that I can speak for any particular jurisdiction as to where they might fall. I do think that there was interest in the option. But again, I think it's going to really take the formation of this agency and have them start going in proof of concept, if it be with the initial administration of park and ride lots, maybe some coordination of the dial ride and human services programs. And I think it's going to be on a jurisdictional basis.
Part of the issue is we have a couple existing
Right.
systems out there. Maricopa has one.
Right. And Coolidge.
Coolidge/Florence kind of have one. And so there's some territorialism that's already built into this process. So your question's a good one, because it's still a good question and still hasn't really been answered, in my opinion. I think it's still out there.
And that's what I'm afraid of. I'm afraid we're going to just kind of keep spinning, and no one's going to want to, you know, put that step forward, which I understand those 2 cities already have systems in place. But gosh, I would love to see us working with them, because they've already worked out a lot of kinks. And
Well, that's, I think, the reason why the PRTA piece makes some sense, because you can move forward with some of the park and ride and some of the transit piece, and yet leave the others independent because they're still there. So, and that may be, to your point, may be the direction that we're going to have to go in order to get down the road, so to speak, so that we can kind of move forward with this and not keep talking about transit.
Well, Mr. Mayor and members of the council, I would agree with what you say. As I mentioned, I think there may be a bit of need for proof of concept to get this agency started. I think that the jurisdictions that are currently providing transit service do see the value in consolidating the more or less administrative costs associated with having individuals reporting for the receipt of federal transit monies is rather arduous and extensive, and you need somebody knowledgeable to do that. And so there definitely would be benefit to having one individual who was sort of responsible. I know, just as an example, the city of Maricopa, the individual who administers their transit, it's a part of the job duty. It's part-time, so as you can imagine, when it comes that time of year where they're required to do their federal reporting, it can be a little overbearing. So I do think that they recognize the value in having an individual or a group of individuals that's very knowledgeable about that, familiar with the process, and it could, free up some of the costs that are associated with having each of those individual jurisdictional transit administrators.
Matt?
Yeah, I mean, that's my fear. The mayor said it, we talked it to death. We need to take some action, and we're gonna have to take the lead if we want this to go once we see the financial proposals. But you keep saying park and ride, but what good is a park and ride if there's nothing to ride? I mean, we need to make a decision about something, and far be it from me, 5 years ago, I would have said absolutely not, but we've seen some sustainable financial models that wouldn't, that would work. And we've talked about it, but I mean, it's frustrating for me personally because we have nothing, and we keep saying park and ride, but there's plenty of parking around town, but there's nothing to ride.
Well, I think what Bethany's here to talk about is really the county-wide governance, not per se our local transit.
Okay, which makes
So, I mean,
sense
they're
to me.
kind of two different things.
Yeah, but it's interrelated. Because
No,
Right.
I
Yeah,
totally.
if someone doesn't step up, then again,
Yeah.
Gotcha, I
there's
totally agree.
nothing to.
Totally agree, Matt.
But I mean, again, I appreciate what you guys have done, and it's a very delicate thing because no one wants to give up their own control. But I think to work together, we're gonna have to figure out how to extend that olive branch or make that step, to say, hey, this is gonna work, and someone's gonna have to step up and do it first. Maybe us,
Yeah. Donna?
And thank you for being here and the information. And I think that one of the things that we have to be mindful of is that, we talk about kind of a competitive, and we're talking about, a lot of people want to go to work and they need a place to go to work. But the other side of that, I know that Maricopa used to take people to the valley and they're not doing that anymore. They want people to stay in their town and shop. And so we have to be mindful that perhaps some of those other entities might be afraid that some of that will come to Casa Grande, and that's a possibility. So I think that, as we move forward, collaborating with them and making sure that they understand the purpose and that they benefit from it as well. But I agree with you, Matt, it's time to kind of move on and get something done.
And I know you're just the messenger tonight, so don't take that the wrong way.
Bob, go ahead.
This question may be for you, but what is our next step if we are leaning towards PRTA management of a
Regional.
what do we need to do?
Well, I think from the perspective of having the PRTA as the governing body, I think the first step is to just hold out till we hear the decision from the Supreme Court. Then it would be to reconvene that transit subcommittee. So there are individuals that have been identified, representatives from each of the PRTA jurisdictions that would be members of that transit subcommittee. That transit subcommittee could convene and start talking about some of these options. Once it's determined, whatever that sort of governing agency is going to be, there's going to be a need to establish the governing board. There's going to be a need to hire, as I mentioned, a transit administrator, somebody who's knowledgeable about the requirements. And then I do think it's Casa Grande, I will mention, because you say that you'd like to see some steps. I know that staff is currently working on getting designated as a recipient. I guess I'm done talking. Of federal funds. And I guess one of the things that I will mention is that, there are both urbanized, Casa Grande urbanized area, and then there are rural areas such as Coolidge within the county. And the way that the federal transit funds work is there are different bins of money for urbanized areas versus rural areas. And so I guess I would emphasize that even if Casa Grande were to elect to join a sort of overarching regional transit governing body, the monies that are allocated for the urbanized areas will need to be spent in the urbanized areas to provide the service. So there are some distinctions about how those funds can be used and how they can be intermixed. And that would be part of the administrative function and part of that sort of coordination and collaboration process.
It's a nice way of saying it gets complicated.
Yeah. Of course.
Yeah.
But a nice way of saying it would be good to have an expert, so we're not piecing it all
Right,
together, right?
right.
Mhm, true.
Any other questions for Bethany? Anyone, comments or questions? Thank you so much for being here today.
Well, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, thank you for having me again. It's always a pleasure.
Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you.
And I've been told to wipe down the podium.
All right, so there's nothing else, and we'll stand adjourned for the next 4 minutes, and we'll start the city council meeting at 7 o'clock.
Did you run up there?
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's city council meeting. The 19th of April. We are on the 19th, right? All right, we'll call the meeting to order. We'll do the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. Do we have any here? One here? Oh. How are you? Good. Well, tell us your name and what church you're with.
And I pastor Calvary Chapel.
Hi. Now I recognize you.
We just moved here. Actually, I've been here. We moved here in July, so I'm a new resident. So it's an honor to be
Great.
here. with
Well,
you.
welcome to Casa Grande, and thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
And please remain standing. We'll do the Pledge of Allegiance afterwards.
Let's pray. Father, we want to thank you tonight. We want to thank you for your favor upon Casa Grande, the growth that's been evident the last number of years. Thank you for this council. Lord, we lift up just the future plans here, the economy, the education, Father, we pray for the youth. Lord, we pray that for strong marriages and families here in Casa Grande. Lord, thank you for the hard work that each of these individuals do every day on a weekly and monthly basis, Lord. And we pray for the meeting tonight. Lord, I pray you'd give each one here wisdom. You'd give them wisdom with any decisions, any discussions. Lord, we pray that your presence would be experienced here as we understand that we want flourishing. Lord, we want people to thrive in this community. Lord, we love you and we thank you and we pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor. You're welcome. And welcome to Casa Grande. Thank you, Bob.
You're welcome.
All right, let the roll call show that everyone is present.
Are you ready for minutes, Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The City Council move approval of the City Council regular meeting minutes from April 5th, which is not that long ago, and that we accept for the record the Arts and Humanities Commission minutes from February 2nd and the Arts and Humanities Commission minutes from March 2nd as they're presented.
Second?
All right, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the minutes are approved. Thank you, Mr. Powell. On item D, claims against the city.
Mayor McFarland, I move to accept and pay the claims dated March 31st to April 13th, 2021 as presented.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, claims are approved. Next item is item E, the meeting agenda approval. And I think there's a change, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we'd like to remove K1.
Okay, so we're going to take K1 off. I think it's the last thing on your agenda.
Last thing, yeah.
Okay, so we're going to remove K1. Any other changes?
Mayor McFarland, I move to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda as amended. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, the meeting agenda is approved. Because we do have a special presentation tonight. Mr. Weaver?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, let me get this going here. So this is going to be a CARES Act update of the entirety. So over the last couple months, we've had different programs, and we've updated you on the different programs, and this one's going to have all of them. And so if you have any questions at the end, we can talk about it. So essentially, the money that we got from the state, we divided that up into 5 programs. The first was business and nonprofit reimbursement.
Do you have a presentation, or no, are you just telling us?
Oh,
Our screens are blank,
sorry.
Steve.
Thanks, Lisa.
I wasn't sure.
Everyone's looking at me strange, and
I
I'm thinking,
know.
do I have like red on my face? There we go. Sorry about that. I had it up on my screen. So, yeah, we have 5 critical areas that we divided the money up into. The first was business and nonprofit reimbursement. That was the program that we put together that the city administered, and we had a group of individuals that reviewed applications. The second was the Chamber of Commerce Business Support, and then we had childcare, residential assistance, which was monies that we gave to nonprofits to administer, and then we had the internet access, which was the Casa Grande Internet Partnership and the community Wi-Fi and hotspot. So the first one we'll talk about is the business program that we had allocated $500,000 to. This was for rent, mortgage, utilities, PPE, and community-based programming for nonprofits. In the first phase, we distributed $236,254 to 47 applicants. And then our second program was the PPE program, and we distributed $26,399 to 15 applicants. And then phase 2, our most recent, we distributed $260,000 to 36 applicants. And then, not directly related to that, we had the Casa Grande Community Marketing Program to the Chamber of Commerce in the amount of $35,400. So now we'll talk about the Residential Assistance Program. This was given to different organizations to help with rent, utility, food bank, childcare. Under the first one is the rent and mortgage utility assistance. We gave $20,000 to the United Way, $15,000 to Against Abuse, and $15,000 to Cara. Under the direct food bank support, we get $10,000 to the Rotary Foundation and the United Way of Pinal County Senior Meal Box Program, $2,500. And then under child care, we had the Boys and Girls Club for $25,000, Casa Grande Alliance for $7,100, and the Pinal Alliance for Economic Growth, the third grade reading program, in the amount of $14,000. Then we had the internet access. This was going to be used for local charter schools, all the school districts. Really, the only one that participated in our program was the Casa Grande Elementary School District, and that was $90,803. We had the Boys and Girls Club Learning Hub that they set up to help with children that needed to go somewhere because their parents couldn't, for $15,000, and Casa Grande Alliance Learning Hub at $15,000. And then we also entered into an agreement with MiterLink, which was going to provide free Wi-Fi connection to people in their homes.
And Steve, those learning hubs they were Wi-Fi
Yes.
enabled, right?
Yeah, they were all kind of intertwined with those.
Okay.
So, and finally, we have the money that's going to be coming to us in this next year, and this is called the American Rescue Act. We've been told we're going to receive $10.87 million from the federal government. Payments will be distributed in 2 different installments, so probably 6 months apart. We're not sure exactly what we can spend the money on. There's a lot of information out there talking about what we can, but we haven't gotten definite word of exactly what we can spend it on. So once we do, we'll bring it back to the council and let you know. But that's the plan right now.
And it's changing.
It is. So that's a pretty quick update. If there's any questions or comments.
Steve, could we get a copy? Would you copy council on those slides?
Yes.
Thank you. Is that all right? You guys, I'd like a copy, and if you want one.
I
Mr.
just
Powell.
had my hand up for a question.
Oh, go ahead.
Steve, has the Main Street been a recipient of any of the monies that have gone out?
Yes.
Okay, good. Wanted to make sure that they were
I'm not sure exactly the amount, but they were a
Couple
recipient.
times, right?
Couple.
A couple
Yeah.
times.
They got
I
it
think.
twice, yeah.
Well, good.
Anybody else? Yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
So, Mr. Weaver, in the numbers you gave us in the budget, that was from the original CARES Act, am I correct?
Yes.
And it looks like we haven't spent about 100 to 150,000, is that correct?
Well, the business and retention one, we spent over 500,000.
But it looks like and I was trying to do quick math as I was going through, but it looks like not all the money's been allocated, am I correct?
That's true.
What's the plan for the unallocated money?
Mr. Mayor, Councilman Lavender, that can be, that's set aside for the city, that we can reserve that for anything in the future, or we can set up additional programs.
So it's not a use or lose situation?
No.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, I kind of had the same question that Mr. Lavender has. Stephen, do you have a remaining fund balance number?
Mr. Mayor, Councilman Huddleston, I don't have a total one because they were all kind of divided up. I know in the business retention, we actually went over, so we're going to have to allocate that from a different source over to that. But some of these, you can see that there's amounts that don't hit that amount at all.
Okay.
Well, and when we set this up too, we had originally set aside dollars to put into the rainy day fund.
That's right.
Not knowing the impact of COVID on the city. So there was money held back intentionally. And the monies that we held back are general fund dollars, not COVID dollars. We spent the COVID dollars that the state gave us.
Okay. And that's kind of where I'm going, of what happens to this money at the end of the fiscal year? Does that carry over as a fund balance? And is it earmarked at that point?
Mr. Mayor, Councilman Huddleston, we have earmarked that over with the 10 million to provide budget authority. But this original amount that we got, if you remember right, all that was paid to public safety public safety wages, and then the savings that we had in our account, we get to use. So it's, in a sense, it's kind of CARES fund, but it's really not. It's really our money to deal with because it's already been spent.
But it loses its identity as CARES Act money after the end of the fiscal year. Is that correct?
Mr. Mayor, Councilman Huddleston, we are still allocating it as such, so we will have a different line item that states that.
Yeah, and I can add a little clarification on that. The bigger cities, any city over 500,000 received the CARES money direct from the federal government. They had to have it spent or allocated by the end of the last year. We did not, because we spent ours on our police and fire, so it was already spent, and so therefore it saved us in our general fund. So those monies we could spend them out further than some of the big cities that got direct funding from the feds.
Okay.
But I think the question, in my understanding, was that we're keeping it as an account or a pot of money to use for these type of, right? That was my understanding. I know that it's right pocket, left pocket, but we have a line item for CARES Act dollars.
Right, and if I could, just to kind of reiterate what the mayor was saying, this was a sort of a weird allocation, as everybody might remember, because the governor, the state got this money, allocated it to the cities, but actually restricted it to some degree and said, you use this to pay your salaries for police and fire. And then the governor in that same letter said, this will free up your general fund to do other programs that you might want to do. So what that did is, we immediately used that money for the purposes that the governor told us we could. And the money that you guys set aside, equal to that amount, is what we've been using as our Casa Grande CARES funding. There is a balance in that, and you did adopt by resolution sort of what your plan is. And we can certainly get back to you with the unspent amount, but you'll recall that you had reserved some for the rainy day fund. Right. And as long as that resolution sort of stays in place, we'll be budgeting appropriate authority into next year, but we don't have a restriction on when it must be spent, like during this fiscal year. It'll simply be the budget. You might see the budget go up because we're spending what we have in savings, right, on the fund balance for that piece. But the fund balance for the CARES Act will essentially be carried into this year's budget.
Okay, all right, thank you, Mayor.
Okay.
Mayor.
Yes, Mr. Powell.
Will, will any part of the multi-millions be available to try to pay down any of the retirements we have with public safety? Or can they be?
Mr. Mayor, Councilman Powell, I don't believe they can. I don't believe that's an allocation. We could take them out from this initial amount because we can spend it how we want. But this next round of monies that we get is going to be specific to certain areas.
Okay.
We don't know exactly what yet.
Right.
Yes, Lisa?
And if I remember correctly, isn't it, we put in reserve about 3 million, 3.4 million, and then we allocated the other 3 towards these programs? So kind of to your point, it's my understanding that whatever's remaining in our allocation will go in with that 3 million. But again, it's general fund, but you still have it in the budget or in the, however, identified as CARES money, but we can use it for whatever. That's kind of what you're saying, right? But it's 3 million plus whatever's left in this.
Right, under the resolution, what we had done was we had allocated specific amounts towards the programs. So for our business program, for our residential assistance program, you all allocated specific amounts for that. And then you left a fund balance, an unallocated amount for you to address later. And of course, any of that money to be spent we would need to come back to council for your approval and authority.
Okay.
Donna?
Just to follow up, on the monies for the rent, mortgage, and utilities, do we have any update from CARA Against Abuse or United Way on what they have spent to provide that assistance to the residents?
Mr. Mayor, Councilwoman McBride, CARA, we're still having a little issues with CARA right now in trying to get a contract signed so that we can administer the money out. But on the other two, with United Way, they've actually spent all their $10,000 we initially gave to them, and we're going to probably give them another $10,000. And I believe those are all on utility and rent and mortgage. That's basically the focus of those two programs. Same with Against Abuse.
Anyone else have any questions? Thanks, Steve. All right, we'll move to item G, which is our consent agenda items. All items listed with an asterisk are considered routine matters and will be enacted by one motion and one roll call vote of the council. There'll be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member or member of the public so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered in its normal sequence of the agenda. Does anyone have any item that you would like to pull off the consent agenda? Anyone from the public? Okay, seeing none, then,
I move approval as presented.
Second?
all right, I have a motion and a second. And Gloria, can I please get a roll call vote?
Councilmember Lavender.
Yes.
Councilmember McBride.
Yes.
Councilmember Fitzgibbons.
Yes.
Councilmember Herman.
Yes.
Councilmember Powell.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Huddleston.
Yes.
Mayor McFarland.
Yes. All right, we'll move to item I, which is award of contracts. I-1, consider ordinance number 3263.
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Terry?
Hopefully this is brief and quick and to the point. Staff is recommending the Mayor and Council authorize a contract with Continental Flooring Company for a base bid amount of $117,092 plus a $21,000 contingency amount for a total amount not to exceed $138,092. This contract will provide for the purchase and installation of flooring for both City Hall A and City Hall B, the Finance and HR building. Formal solicitations for bids was issued. 3 proposals were received for the project. After review of those proposals, it was determined that Continental is the lowest responsive and responsible bidder. If approved, the carpeting will be modular carpet tile, 24 by 24 in size. The color is yet to be determined. A panel, a selection committee will approve a color for those carpets. The carpet comes with a limited lifetime warranty, lifetime limited Dura-Color stain warranty, and lifetime static warranty. And the funding for this project is available in CIP Project 200550. Excuse me. And with that, any questions?
Lisa?
Just a comment. And I'm having a hard time, oh, here, maybe my computer came up here. I was surprised that the discrepancy in the bid. I mean, it was a huge difference. I mean, it's just crazy because I think it was a local vendor that was way higher than the one that was awarded, so it just surprised me.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Fitzgibbons, all of the vendors had a pre-submittal meeting. They all came, viewed the site, measured the sites, determined what they were going to require to do it, and that's the way that they came down.
Right,
It was a little surprising.
yes.
Anyone else have any questions? I will say that I like the 24 by 24 tiles, because if one gets damaged, you just replace the one tile.
Yeah, we've had excellent experience with those.
Okay, good. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, back in the older days, the members of the fire department did a lot of the carpet laying.
Uh-oh, chief.
Okay.
He's not smiling.
All right, can I get an ordinance number, please?
Ordinance number 3263, an ordinance of the council of the city of Casa Grande, Arizona, accepting a proposal from Continental Flooring Company for the purchase and installation of flooring materials for City Hall and City Hall Building B, authorizing expenditure of public funds and authorizing the execution of a contract.
Mayor McFarland, I would move for the approval of ordinance number 3263 as presented.
Second?
All right, I have a motion and a second. Gloria, can I please get a roll call vote?
Councilmember Lavender.
Yes.
Councilmember McBride.
Yes.
Councilmember Fitzgibbons.
Yes.
Councilmember Herman.
Yes.
Councilmember Powell.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Huddleston.
Yes.
Mayor McFarland.
Yes. All right, next item is I2, consider resolution number 5292. And since city manager's not here, Stephen, it's you.
That's me. Okay. Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm going to try to use this pointer, but the people sitting up on the front may not be able to see that, but when we get to a couple pictures here. So we're here to talk about some City Hall building security improvements. So why do we need security? We need to ensure that our city staff feel safe at work. That's the number one priority. Staff has encountered issues recently in the past that could have been avoided if we'd had some sort of form of security. And we also have a lot of people that just wander around City Hall that they may not have to be here for a reason or not. And so it's time to have some security or some walls that are put up to basically be in line with everybody else. Not that we follow everybody else, but really this is, when you look around in the different cities around, we're probably the only one that you can actually do this. So this is a picture of our current, this is the main City Hall entrance. And as you see, as people enter, they see a visitor sign. They're supposed to check in at the receptionist's desk, or they can wander down the hallway to the city clerk's office or head down to the council chambers, or they can go downstairs or go upstairs to the city manager's office. And then the second picture is just a picture of facing the other way, and that's the city attorney's office there to the left there. So What we're proposing, which I'll show on a different thing, but where you just have a wall that goes across the stairway there.
Hey, Steve?
Yeah.
Can you use your mouse on here? Maybe use it on the screen? Because we can see your mouse.
Oh.
There you go.
Oh, okay, here we go.
There you go.
Yeah. So there's going to be a wall that would basically enclose right in this section right here that would go over the stairwell. And there's going to be doorways that open up, that are two ways. They open up, and then you can either go downstairs or you can go upstairs. And they'll be all card lock where you use your little keypad. And so basically what we're going to do is we're going to be changing the culture of our city hall in a lot of ways. I'm kind of jumping ahead of myself here. But really what's going to happen is people come in and they'll check in at the receptionist, and then the receptionist will call. Let's say they're coming to visit me. They'll call up to me and say, John Doe's here to visit with you. I will come down the stairs and I will get John Doe and I'll escort him upstairs, which we believe this is going to be an increase in customer service, because before we just have people that come in and sometimes they don't know to check into the receptionist desk and they wander around and they really don't know where they're going. So then there will also be a wall that will go just right underneath here that would go down to the city clerk's office. So we're going to have two walls that are going to go up. We're going to continue the wood pattern on the bottom so it looks somewhat consistent with the city hall. So those would be the two entrances. Once you come in, you'll go to the receptionist. You can either go downstairs, upstairs, or down the hall. But those will all be escorted. Now, at the development center, so this is the part where you come into the development center, we have a similar situation where you can walk in, you can talk to the receptionist up here, or you can just wander down the stairs and go into planning, or you can walk back here and go where all the staff is in the back. And so what will happen here is we're going to have two doors that will go over here and over here that will stop the access, and they'll be card locked similar. And then down here, they're going to put up some glass, and it's not really bulletproof glass, but it's bullet resistance. Bulletproof glass is really, really expensive, but they said the bullet resistance actually works pretty well. So that will be put up here, and then there's going to be a divider over here on this little island here in the back where they can have two separate desks there. Because they need it when they have people come to do plans review. And then this back area is going to be enclosed, and they're going to have a separate entrance so that if someone comes in and they're talking to them, they can actually invite them to the back where they would walk around here, go through the back, and come through the back side and enter that room where they have a little bit of privacy. And so those are the two entrances. So the main entrance will have two non-bearing walls in the front of the hallway that leads to the clerk's office and in front of the stairs, card lock doors, bullet resistance film added to the glass reception area, and the wood baseboard to match the existing. And so this is just a picture of what it will look like. So not a lot will change there. The receptionist area will still be exactly the same. They will be adding the bullet resistant film to the existing glass that's on the receptionist area. And then you'll have the top to wall on this side and top to wall on this side. The development center have the similar bullet resistance film on the glass. It will create two workstations. It will add two doors to restrict access to downstairs in the development center, and then a new room to review plans. And that's just a picture of what it looks like. You can see the little room that's going to be added, fairly small. And then this little divider here will divide up the desks, so they'll have two separate people that can be talking at the same time. And then here's the two doors. Some of the benefits we believe that will enhance customer service, because there will be an escort. They will have visitor badges, which will help when people see that they have a visitor on and be like, oh, hey, can I help you? It will identify them as someone that's new to City Hall that hasn't been here. and then the privacy issue. So recommendation, we advertised, this was a statement of qualifications, which means that we put it out for bid, and it was based on the qualifications. We had 5 firms that submitted to us. We had a selection group that reviewed these and interviewed them, and Capital R was selected as the number 1 candidate. We met with Capital R to determine the needs, and then they gave us a cost estimate or a cost of how much it was to build that. And so it's staff recommendation that we award the contract to Capital R in the amount of $49,957.28. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Powell?
I know security in most of, across the country we've certainly had a lot of shootings and those type of things. Is this in direct response to anything we've had happen here that's bothered us, or is this something just to prepare ourselves so that it doesn't?
Well, Mr. Mayor, Councilman Powell, it's a combination of both, really. I mean, we've had incidences, and I wouldn't say certain ones, but we've had incidences where employees have not felt safe. And that's really our number 1 priority, because we have people that just wander in and go to different places, and you have no control of that. You could be sitting at your desk and all of a sudden someone's there. And we need to plan for the future, because neither Larry or I want to be standing across the room saying that, hey, we tried our best, but we really didn't, when we have an incident that actually happens.
The one that's going to be the guide, that's a full-time job, I would guess, somebody that would sit in the entrance to the city hall and guide them to wherever they're going?
We have one now, we have a receptionist.
Okay.
It already exists, so.
Now, are you gonna have anybody with a pistol on, or is it gonna just be, okay?
No.
Not unless I bring mine.
Yeah.
Matt?
It's kind of sad, but I understand the need for it. But like 10 years ago, I remember we didn't even lock the doors anytime, at night. You remember that? It was always open. I was amazed when I first started. They're like, oh, yeah, just go on in whenever you can get your mail. So we've come to this, but it's for the better that we do it.
Donna?
I apologize because I'm confused about something.
Okay.
When you're coming in from the back door, coming in, and you said, so the stairs are going to be blocked off, but they can still come in. Those back doors will be unlocked during hours?
No.
Or no?
No, Mr. Mayor, Councilwoman McBride, those are completely locked. They're not, you can't access it from the back. They're locked all the time.
They're locked down.
They've been locked?
They've been locked.
Okay. That's
Yeah,
the
the only
difference.
door that's open currently is the front door.
Right,
Yeah.
okay. But the wall, they're not going to be able to go in, we're not going to be able to buzz people in from the back. They're
No.
going to have to come through the front, always?
Yes.
Okay.
Were we able to look at any type of glass or window? I mean, you just hate walking into a big wall right there, but I understand the reason for it, and I'm happy we're doing something with security. I was just curious, when you got with the construction company, if there was any discussion, or if it just kind of defeats the purpose to have some type of glass, even if it's in the door glass or panels or
Up high.
something, so it's just not walking into a wall, but, because it's not a huge lobby.
No, it's
so
not.
Right.
It is gonna be right there, so, just curious, Stephen. Of course, I support this whole project, so.
Mr. Mayor, Councilwoman Fitzgibbons, we didn't look at that directly, mainly for cost purposes, because mainly the issue with the wood that you see all around in City Hall, that's finished work. It's really cost prohibitive, but we did at least get the bottom frame to be exactly the same, so there would be some continuation to it. But we can look at that. I mean, we're obviously gonna have to put stuff on the wall to make it look better, art, humanities commission or something, to put something up there to make it look more inviting than what it's going to look like.
Right. Okay.
Bob?
That's probably a good new home for mayor and council portraits.
They'll want
They can take the elevator up to look at those.
Anybody else have any other questions? All right. Seeing none, then can I get a resolution number, please, Gloria?
Resolution number 5292, a resolution of the council of the city of Casa Grande, Arizona, accepting the proposal from Capital R Inc., DBA Capital R Construction, to provide construction services on the Casa Grande City Hall security project, authorizing expenditure of public funds, and authorizing the execution of a contract.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve Resolution 5292 as presented.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Gloria, can I please get a roll call?
Councilmember Lavender.
Yes.
Councilmember McBride.
Yes.
Councilmember Fitzgibbons.
Yes.
Councilmember Herman.
I'm gonna vote yes, but it's also a good place for a, maybe a revolving art exhibit, Gloria. You know, all those walls. So, yes, definitely.
Councilmember Powell.
Well, if Matt's not scared, I'm not either. Vote yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Huddleston.
Yes.
Mayor McFarland.
Yes. All right, the next item is I3, consider resolution number 5293. Someone from the police department here? There they are.
Well, that's timing, isn't it?
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Good evening.
Staff is recommending the mayor and city council authorize the purchase of one 2021 Ford F-150 police responder 4x4 truck through Santan Ford utilizing Arizona State Contract ADSPO 17-166124 in the amount of $38,274. This vehicle will be our second Stone Garden vehicle, and per the grant contract, it can only be used for Stone Garden operations. It will be in addition to the fleet for maintenance purposes only, but once the vehicle reaches its end of life, we will send it to auction. We will not be asking for a replacement vehicle, but should another similar grant come available, we could ask to replace it with grant monies. And with that, I will answer any questions.
Bob?
Is that price all inclusive, or will there be a separate emergency equipment setup cost?
There will be a second upfitting cost. Right now, we're in discussions with Stone Garden. There was a piece of equipment when I originally came for approval to accept the grant for an optic, and this vehicle won't accept the optic. You can't mount it anywhere. So we are speaking with them to try to use that money in the upfit.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Powell?
Mayor, I'm just going to ask the city attorney, my brother-in-law, his brother owns Santan Ford, and should I not vote it? I mean,
I'll have to, so it's your brother-in-law's brother?
Yeah, my brother-in-law's brother is the owner, and my brother-in-law is a salesman there.
So, under the conflict of interest rules, even though it's somewhat of an indirect one, I would probably recommend that you refrain from commenting or voting in this matter as a result of that.
Okay.
Okay, anybody else have any other questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, seeing no other questions or comments, then I'll call for a resolution number, please. Gloria?
Resolution number 5293, a resolution of the council of the city of Casa Grande, Arizona, accepting the bid from Santan Auto Partners LLC, DBA Santan Ford, for the purchase of a 2021 Ford F-150 Police Responder 4x4 Box 145 WBXL, authorizing the expenditure of public funds and authorizing execution of a contract with or purchase order to Santan Auto Partners LLC, DBA Santan Ford.
Mayor McFarland, I would move for approval of resolution number 5293 as presented.
Second?
All right, I have a motion and a second. Gloria, can I please get a roll call vote?
Councilmember Lavender.
Yes.
Councilmember McBride.
Yes.
Councilmember Fitzgibbons.
Yes.
Councilmember Herman.
Yes.
Councilmember Powell abstaining.
Abstain.
Mayor Pro Tem Huddleston.
Yes.
Mayor McFarland.
Yes. All right. The last item on our agenda tonight, item I-4, consider resolution number 5294. And I think this is to you, Brett.
Lucky me, I did try to get Stephen to present this, but he told me no, I didn't believe him until right now. So I'll go ahead and present this. This is a request by staff to consider approval of a right-of-way license agreement with the Zayo Group to allow them to install a fiber optic network within the city, or a system within the city. And the mayor and council are aware from some of the updates that we've had, Zayo has actually been within the city for a little while now. They kind of first approached us at the beginning of the pandemic as they were working through a project that what it does, it provides high-speed capabilities to our local schools as well as the libraries. And so it was a federally funded project, and because this license agreement might take a while, especially when we were struggling to meeting, the mayor authorized Larry to execute an MOU with them that allowed them to get started pending resolution of the issues relating to this. So they have been in town and started their fiber installation. Ultimately, there is one of the exhibits to the agreement shows kind of what their ultimate build out is, at least their initial build out. And you can see it's primarily sort of around the city. They go up through Pinal, down Selma, and as well as on Val Vista, which gives them access to other areas in Pinal County. Generally under state law, this type of company, they're providing dark fiber, and because of that, we can charge a reasonable fee to try to recover what our anticipated costs are. It's not supposed to exceed that for basically dealing with the right-of-way. And so we've had conversations with them concerning that for some time. The fee that we had set was 89 cents. It's one that they were willing to agree to. It's one that Goodyear has done. We did have a lot of discussions because there are changes both in state and federal legislation that may even change ours to do that. As council is well aware through small cell wireless and otherwise, they continue to say that people should be able to use our right-of-way for free, and then we'll just maintain it, even though they're using it for a commercial purpose. But in this case, Zayo has agreed to that fee. But in lieu of paying that fee, one of the things the city has been talking to Zayo about is having them install some fiber to city buildings. Initially, we were looking at doing a number of traffic signals and otherwise, but you have to balance the numbers. What you would expect from a license fee versus what you can ask them to do. So we can't really ask them to do something that would grossly exceed what the licensing fee would be. And of course, they would just turn us down and say, we'll pay the licensing fee. So we had asked that they bring fiber to a number of buildings as well as traffic signals. And they had essentially said, when they did the math, they said, we can't do that. But what we have agreed to is that they're going to provide essentially a network ring for us with 2 strands of fiber, which doesn't sound like a lot until you realize the amount of data that fiber optic can carry. In theory, it's unlimited. It doesn't really work in person, but compared to what our capabilities are now, it's exponentially greater than what we can do. And it allows us to tie City Hall to the North Operations Center out to the public safety facility. And so some of the issues that we have had with connecting the public safety facility to our server room here in City Hall may become a thing of the past as a result of that. And from the city's standpoint, looking at it financially, we had looked at a number of different projects and trying to run this project before and found that the cost greatly exceeded what we'd be able to do, and certainly what we'd be able to receive from Zayo as a result of the fee. Most importantly, when you look at some of the numbers and you see that they're gonna have like a 420,000 foot build out, that sounds like a lot, but we can only charge them, most of that is above ground, and we can only charge our fee, of course, for things that are within our right-of-way. So the trenching amount is only about 17,000 feet. So the annual fee would be about $15,800 a year. And the city staff feels that the agreement for them to provide in lieu provides a good benefit for us and a win-win for both Zayo and the city. So the term of the agreement is 5 years. It is a non-exclusive license agreement, so we're not just saying Zayo can come in and no one else can. We do have the ability to bring other providers in. There are provisions in the agreement that they'll have to relocate if we need to do a roadway project, for example, and they do it at their cost. So they also have to accommodate other users if we put them in. So if we're putting in water, if we're putting in sewer, they still have to be able to accommodate us in doing that. So the term of the agreement is 5 years. It does have 3 renewals. And in lieu, like I said, in lieu of the annual fee, we'd be accepting the network capabilities. And so the agreement's about 38 pages long. I can kind of go over it as in detail as you want, but Gloria asked that I keep it as short as possible, and I'm going to try to do that and just open it up for any questions.
Does anyone have any questions?
I do, Mayor.
Oh, go ahead, Bob.
The lines that they put in for our benefit, do they retain ownership of that, and do they maintain them if they get broken or cut or something?
Yes, Mayor McFarland and Councilmember Huddleston, they do maintain those throughout the term, but we have ownership of them at the end. So they are our fibers, and if Zayo went and pulled up the rest of theirs and abandoned them in place, we would still get them. So they'll be ours, but they are maintaining them at least during the term of the agreement. And it's very likely that the life of fiber is kind of a big question. It is kind of a delicate thing, but in our climate, it tends to have a longer life than it may in some other places. So when they get to the point where they have to be potentially replacing it, it'll likely be 30 to 50 years out. If we still have an agreement with them, we'll certainly be discussing that, to do that. But we do, under the statute, have the right to retain ownership of our own fibers, and we will get those at the end. They're, for the most part, like if you think about going up Pinal, our fibers will be in their conduit, but then there's pieces of it as we move off to the NOC, as we move into our buildings that we'll actually be responsible for because it's in our own conduit, it's not in Zayo's. But any of the stuff that we share, they will maintain, and we get it at the end. It's also important to note, as we did in the RCA, that this is dark fiber. So it's not lit, it's not gonna immediately allow us to do things. We have to have our own servers, our own, ability to do that, which our IT department is capable of doing and prepared to do once we get these. Did ask them like when they think they'll finish their build out, at least to our facilities, and they're hoping to be there by the end of May or middle of June.
Thank you.
And this is 100% our fiber, right? There's nothing else on it.
Right, the 2 strands of fiber that we have are entirely in our control. The only restriction is that we can only use it for a governmental purpose, so we can't go lease it out to anybody else or provide it to commercial businesses that would be in competition of them. But we can use it for our governmental purposes.
Okay. Anybody else have any other questions? All right. Seeing none, then can I get a resolution number, please, Gloria?
Resolution number 5294, a resolution of the council, the city of Casa Grande, Arizona, approving the terms and conditions of a fiber optics telecommunications right-of-way license agreement with the Zayo Group LLC and authorizing the execution of a contract.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve Resolution 5294 as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Gloria, can I please get a roll call vote?
Councilmember Lavender.
Yes.
Councilmember McBride.
Yes.
Councilmember Fitzgibbons.
Yes.
Councilmember Herman.
Yes.
Councilmember Powell.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Huddleston.
Yes.
Mayor McFarland.
Yes. All right. That's most of the agenda. Only thing left are our reports. So I'm going to start with you, Mr. Lavender.
The only thing I have to report, Mr. Mayor, is after our last meeting and the conversations about the bus situation and the proposed development, our transportation director was able to get together with Mr. Tice and form a relationship that's going to be very beneficial for our school children and her being a part of the decision-making process. She raves about Mr. Tice, so Mr. Weaver, if you would share that with him as well and the great work that he's doing. So we thank the city staff for reaching out to me, who I put in contact with our transportation director.
Great. Good to hear. Thanks, Jeff. Donna?
Reminder that this is National Crime Victims Week, and I know that the city has an active group that are involved with victims, so just a shout out to them. Also, I had the opportunity, Steve Hardesty took me on a Jeep tour at 6:30 last Friday morning out to CG Mountain, and it was quite enlightening to see what's being done out there and what needs to be done. If you haven't had the chance to go all the way around the mountain, it'll shock you. It disappoints me that people are not respecting, our area. Unfortunately, they just put out signs about no shooting and that kind of stuff, and a week ago, and they already have bullet holes in them. So it was interesting to go out there, and I think that it goes to show what our community service is. It's not just about the community center and the parks, but, there are other areas that they're taking care of. So hats off to him for doing that. And then also, last week was our 911 communications week, and there was a lot of activities for our 911 operators, and just to thank them for the work they do every day. And that's it.
Thank you, Donna. Lisa?
Well, I wanted to thank Pastor from Calvary Baptist for coming today. As many of you may have seen, or actually we're going to probably be publicizing it, but the mayor and the Faith Alliance is doing a mayor's appreciation lunch for the pastors, everyone in the faith community, as well as some of our nonprofits. And so that's going to be held on May 18th from 11 to 1. I'll make sure I send all the council a invitation if you guys would like to attend. But, it's important for us to thank them. You probably noticed that we really have had someone every meeting. As a matter of fact, they said, well, maybe we shouldn't go, because we know that Councilmember Herman and Huddleston like to do the prayers, so maybe we shouldn't have anyone, but you probably noticed, ever since Pastor Elgin has been the president, he's done such a fantastic job reaching out to the churches, and we have someone at all the meetings, so we want to thank them, but we also want to share with them some of the things that the Faith Alliance is working on. One is overnight shelter for the homeless, and secondly, Deputy Chief Leos has brought to our attention, as many of you know, with all the immigration issues with people crossing the border, and the Border Patrol has been dropping in certain communities, and some of these communities have worked with the faith community to house and help provide services to the immigrants coming into their communities. So Chief Leos has been working with the Border Patrol, and he came to us and wanted to see how the faith community would get involved, maybe put together some type of kind of an emergency action plan. We know it's not happening in our community yet, but if it does, obviously the police department can't handle these issues. They have enough going on. And he's taken a proactive approach to see what the faith community and some of the nonprofits can do once this does happen, if it does happen, what they can do. And they, the board was really open to, that's what you love about churches. They're so giving and want to help those underprivileged. So they are going to do whatever they can. So we're hoping at this appreciation lunch, we can talk about some of the issues that we're facing here in the community and how they can get involved. So again, thanks to Chief Leos for being proactive. They did have a blood drive last Saturday, and considering we're still in COVID, they still had 100 people come. So obviously, we still need blood, and it was a very successful event at the Presbyterian Church. People were there. It was well run, a lot of participation. So thank you to the Faith Alliance and Presbyterian Church for coordinating that. And the Homeless Coalition is still meeting regularly, and if any of you want to sit in, I know Donna sits in and the mayor sometimes in those meetings, but they're very active conversations. There's a lot going on in the community, and it's very interactive. We have a lot of participation on those phone calls or Zoom calls. But again, I have to compliment the police department, and I know Stephen, Larry's not here, but if you can just send the message to the chief. Deputy Chief Leos has been so good and so proactive on many of these issues. One of the other ones is the housing eviction prevention, and they did extend the moratorium through the end of June, but he has been on from the beginning to see what we need to do. So, we have Constable Scott Elliott that's been participating, and they're trying to put together a plan on when this moratorium expires, what we can do as a city, and so the police department aren't the ones out there taking care of everyone who's been evicted. So we've been working with different agencies on what to do when that comes to light. So a lot going on. The resource center is getting up and going, Monday through Wednesdays, 8 to 5. So if anyone, if you have anyone that's in need, make sure you send them out there. But there's a lot going with that organization. I want to thank them for everything too. So that's pretty much it for me. Sorry.
Matt?
Thanks. We had a great shredding event with the Youth Commission on Saturday. They got over $1,800 in donations, so it's a really good one to help fund their scholarships and their activities. And we shredded about 2 trucks of paper, and it went very smoothly, no contact. The kids were great, and the community was great, and it was a lot of fun. And I just have to comment, Larry's gone 1 meeting and the lights are out, so, it just
It is
goes.
darker in here.
Come on, Steven. That's it.
Mr. Powell?
Which lights out? No, I'm just amazed at how much vibrancy there is in our community right now with the development people and commercial people and industrial people. It's really fun to be riding a horse that's a good one instead of having to try to make deals with companies that aren't. But I'm proud, and I know a lot of people are, and to see all the bare wood that's all over the place that will be homes in a number of days. But as I say, I think it's a real benefit, and John, I think you would agree with me, huh?
I'm anti-girl
Well, I'm not, so anyway.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Powell.
No report, Mayor.
No report?
Nope.
All right. Thanks, Bob. I've got a couple things. I just wanted to kind of give everybody an update on COVID-19 infection rates and vaccinations, since I know everybody's kind of starting to ignore it, but we need to not ignore it. It's still very much here. We still have about a 10% infection rate. We still have over 100 infections per 100,000 in our zip code, which is higher than the county and higher than the state. So I would encourage everyone to please be careful, especially if you have not been vaccinated, even if you have been vaccinated. Just to give you some numbers, the state is at 38% vaccination rate. 85122 is 31% vaccination rate, or vaccinated, and Pinal County is 26. So the state is much higher in terms of numbers of vaccinations than the county and our own city. Now, we're better than the county, so I guess that's a good thing. But still, we've got a ways to go, and if you know somebody who hasn't been vaccinated, they can literally walk into the Dorothy Powell Center and get a vaccine. There's no reason why someone hasn't got a vaccine if they want one. Let's put it that way. So we continue to work on a water resource plan. It's coming together. I'm excited to see it. We've been working with the county. We've been working with Arizona Water Company. A lot of good stuff coming down the pipe with regard to our water resource plan. I did want to mention, I didn't know this till today, but it's National Volunteer Week. Did you know that?
I did. I was busy. I've been busy.
So, a big thank you to all of our volunteers, especially our boards and commissions and the folks who volunteer their time for the city. We do appreciate it, so much appreciated. Legislature is still in session. We're still keeping our eye on them. There's potential for, I'm not a tax guy, but the governor really wants to lower property or income tax, and if he does, it's about a $2.2 million hit a year to our general fund. which I don't understand the reason for that or why that's a good idea. So, anyway, just if you my fellow council members, if you talk to your legislators, please let them know your thoughts on that. We got a new Aldi's coming in. I know that John announced that. I think Larry sent out some additional information on it here this last week, and I think you all saw it. That's exciting, although it's going to be right next to Walmart. So anyway, it's all good. We did the mayor's town hall last week, and it was on the general plan. So I just wanted to kind of make sure that everybody has the general plan on your radar. The brochure for the voter brochure was sent out, and you all should have received it. Additionally, the actual ballot will be mailed out this week. So beginning April 21st, it's supposed to go in the mail. You have until May 18th to turn it in. Do not wait till the 18th. If you do, you have to then deliver it to Florence or to the county office here on Cottonwood. So those are the two locations that you can hand deliver, because it is a mail-in ballot only. And there's only one proposition on it, so it'll take you about 30 seconds to fill it out. So please fill it out. And if you have any questions on it, call me. No, you can go to the website, city's website. It's very detailed on our website, and it'll tell you everything you need to know about it. It's a really good place to get information. Let's see. I attended a seminar last week. It was a virtual seminar. It was a Smart Cities seminar, and covered everything from how do we cover the last mile, right? How do we ensure access for all residents and businesses in your community for digital, and this digital equity, they're calling it. Some of this fiber optics we need to get these services to all of our citizens, and it really needs to be free. I know that's one of our strategic plans, is to get access to the internet to all of our citizens, and I truly believe that is very critical. It's critical to our young people. It's critical to our citizens. So this whole smart cities thing, it dealt with a lot of that. It also dealt with my favorite, which is autonomous vehicles. And so I was kind of in my element with a bunch of nerds about autonomous vehicles and their systems. There's about 3 or 4 cities that have them, that actually are running autonomous vehicles right now, which I found fascinating, that they're actually functioning. So I'm going to be looking into a little bit of that. We're doing a lot of smart stuff, but we don't put it under the smart umbrella. So I was impressed that we were actually doing a lot of the things that the smart cities was talking about. So you'll hear more about that as I kind of put my notes together and communicate. And lastly, I know John's promoted this or put it out already, but the city of Casa Grande, through the first 3 months of the year, is up 85% in new housing permits. We're at 393 new permits just in the first 3 months. We had 212 last year. We're 393 this year. So, and that's just new housing permits. So I think as some of these permits come through on the apartment complexes, that number actually will jump up, because that's in some of these numbers. In fact, Maricopa's numbers are pretty high, but that's because I believe they have a couple of apartment complexes that they're actually building right now that are in their numbers. So anyway, that being said, everybody have a nice evening. Thank you for listening to us tonight, and meeting adjourned.